So, with the background of the Illuminati behind us, we have the lead into the first month, and the first month itself is here. The first issue noted is the annual for the Initiative, an Avengers series about the young people with powers being pulled into the Initiative program now that the Superhuman Registration Act has gone into effect. This has almost nothing to do with it, and really, I got far more out of the story about the character of Armory. I read the first issue of the Initiative when it had first come out. I thought it was bullshit that Armory was stripped of her alien power gauntlet because she accidentally killed someone when the whole situation was clearly somebody else's fault. Take someone in off the streets and then expose them to their worst fear at its worst level, and then act surprised when they freak the fuck out. Yeah, I call bullshit on that. This story explains how Armory got that gauntlet thing and makes the point even more obvious. Naturally, of course, this will be the last time we ever see or hear about her. Learn that the chance to use the gauntlet thing to try to make the world better was giving her a reason to live after a suicide attempt. Now it's gone, she's physically, mentally scarred and mentally conditioned to say nothing about that. I'm presuming we hear this story to maybe think that the Skrulls being in charge wouldn't be such a bad change of direction, would it? Speaking of which, the relevant story to our series involves a new flag smasher, that's a supervillain, who plans to strike at America's soul by destroying the Liberty Bell. This is because this particular team is set in Philadelphia, and it was either this or protect some cheesesteaks. They're opposed by the Libertines, a super team which does not have all Patriot-themed heroes, because that would make a bad idea even stupider. After they defeat their conveniently themed villain, they head back to base to drink and have sex with each other, while their leader, the revolutionary, goes to report in, only turns out he's a Skrull, and he's reporting in to his Skrull boss, suggesting that every team in the Initiative, in fact, has a Skrull on it. The Initiative is being used to help their invasion of supers. So, another victory for the Initiative, I guess. The one possible good idea is getting screwed up in pretty much every way possible. As if you needed any proof that the government regulating superheroes wouldn't be a clusterfuck. This is the same group that thought they could stop terrorists by giving every person with wandering hands a job at the airport. The next issue is Secret Invasion Saga number 1, though there's no point in me getting into that because this is Tony Stark reading a report about Skrulls to get everybody caught up on Skrull history who's going to be reading the series. Me giving you a summary of a summary would be a waste of your time and mine, so let's move on to the actual start of this Secret Invasion. The issue starts with something about a prophecy and the Skrull Queen, before getting back to the crux of the problem. How can we trust each other if we know that we can't trust each other on account of not knowing if each other is in fact really each other or some other in place of each other? See? Iron Man wants Reed Richards and Hank Pym to see if maybe they can figure this out, but their studies are interrupted by a call from S.W.O.R.D., that organization run by that lady with the green hair that we saw back in Age of Ultron. A Skrull ship has arrived and landed in the Savage Land, as we also saw in Age of Ultron. I hope this isn't becoming portentous. Stark calls up Spider-Woman to tell her to get things moving with their Avengers, but she also passes it along to the other Avengers, who decides that this merits investigating, and to prove they're better than the main Avengers, steal one of the Quinjets. A little GTA will surely help the reputation of heroes outside of the registration, won't it? They arrive slightly ahead of the other team at the site of the ship, and naturally there's a confrontation, what with them being outside of the law that the main team have backed. But while they're bickering, S.W.O.R.D. is watching all of this, including the visiting Dum Dum Dugan, only he's not. He's a Skrull, and demonstrates this by blowing up their space station. Jarvis is a Skrull too, and he uploads an alien virus into the Iron Man armor, which gets in the way of Stark's grandstanding. It also screws up S.H.I.E.L.D. real good, since Stark took over the organization after Civil War. Now this also affects, or there are separate Skrull agents, I can't be sure, it affects all the superhuman prisons, including the Cube, where Marvel Boy from Illuminati is imprisoned, who takes this as a sign that it's time for him to live up to that legacy that they talked about. At least that's my guess. It might be that he's going to try and get a tougher name than Marvel Boy. Step 1 appears to be, go and beat up the Thunderbolts. Another Skrull slips into the Baxter building disguised as Sue Richards and opens the portal to the negative zone, which starts ripping the building apart. But the real surprise is what comes out of the crashed ship in the Savage Land. It's superheroes, but from an age roughly on par with the 80s era of Marvel. Finally, just as Reed figures out what the Skrulls have done to become undetectable, Hank Pym shoots him in the face. One more reason, I guess, that Logan will want to stab him. What surprises me is, after having done Age of Ultron, which I know came after this, so this might seem a bizarre comparison, but after that had jerked around so much and given us so little to the reader, Secret Invasion #1 just keeps going and going and going. You think you've reached the final climax, and there's still more to go. That's a welcome change. No matter what else I might take away from the series, it at least feels each issue is indeed a full issue, and not some photo catalog of the apocalypse. The "he loves you before doing whatever bad thing the Skrulls do" is an interesting bit of portention, and I'm curious to see how that, plus the variety of their coordinated attacks, goes. I'm feeling much more optimistic about this particular storyline compared to the last one, assuming that it can deliver on this build-up. Our next issue is Mighty Avengers #12, which is continuing a tale from Secret War. Not Secret Wars, Secret War. The reason Stark is in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. was because Nick Fury waged a secret war against Latveria using some superheroes and then wiped their memories of the event. Wolverine didn't take that well and slaughtered him, but it was one of those life model decoys. I guess Fury figured that Logan might be a little ornery about someone messing with his head. This issue is now the aftermath. Fury on the run/retired, he gets a visit from DeFontaine, who fills him in on the fallout, and then they start with the boning. But this is all just to gain his confidence, as Fury suspects. Others want his S.H.I.E.L.D. codes, and with mention of the Queen, presumably they are Skrulls. I mean, besides the fact that this storyline is about Skrulls. I mean, that should be obvious, but sometimes there are peripheral plots in these tie-ins, see, and so it really could actually be like the Black Queen or something that they're talking about, throwing you for a loop there. Anyway, Fury doesn't draw this out. She gets 2 chances to come clean, and he blows her brains out. Yep, she's a Skrull. Fury tells Maria Hill, during the time when she was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., before she fucked it up and Stark got the job, he tells her that things are bad, and then Houdini's out of there to go meet with Spider-Woman, who's even less happy to see him than S.H.I.E.L.D. But he gets her to go back inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and report to him what's going on, because if anyone saw this shit coming, it's Nick Fury. This issue really surprised me, considering it's Mighty Avengers, and we have a brief appearance by one Avenger who's a double agent. The willingness to repurpose the series as a Nick Fury vehicle for this was a bold choice, and setting him up as a man working alone to succeed at what whole organizations can't is an interesting idea. Combined with an art style that capitalizes on the messy world that Fury inhabits, this issue has me intrigued and excited to see where it goes from here. Our final issue is New Avengers #40, and like Mighty Avengers, it too is not about the Avengers. This picks up after the events seen in Illuminati #1, when the Emperor tells everyone to use what they learned and get to work. Well, we learned that if the scene had been allowed to continue in that issue, the princess would have demanded to know what the hell is going through his wrinkled green head. There's prophecies that he's ignoring in favor of this stupid plan of his. Well, in response to her shitting all over his big moment, he has her arrested and tossed somewhere, presumably her exile on another planet, where she repeatedly says, "He loves me," a connection to the phrase from Secret Invasion #1, or possibly a connection to the Beatles, of course. They do an experiment where they clone Reed Richards and try to get him to tell what he knows about Galactus. But the Emperor's annoyed with Richards and decides to interrupt the experiment by shooting the clone in the head. It quickly sinks in that he's the asshole here and leaves so they can try it again. We don't know what the result of that is, but considering that the next page is Galactus destroying the throne world, obviously it didn't go well. Well, the Queen is returned from exile. She says that this all proves the prophets are right, and that the new Skrull homeworld is to be Earth. But there's the matter of Earth currently being occupied. The High Priest of Science explains that, after their years of study from what they got from the Illuminati, it's allowed them to create a new breed of Super Skrull which, with the right samples, give them any of the abilities of superheroes, including multiple powers. But as noted, it's just another brute force attack, and brute force attacks have always failed them. But it could also be used to duplicate any human's appearance and power, helping them to replace heroes with their own agents. Elektra reports in as the pilot of the program, and the Queen is so impressed she plans to be one of the infiltrators herself, and so it's suggested that she has replaced Spider-Woman. It's always about Spider-Woman with Bendis, isn't it? That's the first of our crossovers, and I have to reiterate, this is leaving me with a lot more positive attitude towards the series than Age of Ultron. While that was a case where the supplements were proving better than the main book in the early issues, this has the supplements fleshing out the story without supplanting it. I'm actually interested in seeing how all this unfolds. We are left with a lot of stronger possibilities with the 3 storylines that we're seeing so far. Now, I'm not counting the initiative because if I never have to say libertines again, I'll be happy. While it is entirely possible that this is going to fail to live up to the setup, so far it's giving me a sense of optimism for the storyline. There are a lot of possibilities and already some dangling threads. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. So next time we'll go on to the second month of Secret Invasion.